Thank you very much, Chairman Duncan, and also Ranking Member DeGette for holding this hearing. And I want to thank the witnesses for being here, sharing your opinions, and in some cases, your expertise on the facts. Mr. Chairman, I've submitted a copy to the committee of this document that I'd like to submit for the record, and it's directly from the Heritage Foundation website. And
Objection, so ordered.
thank you. It's titled, Trump Administration Embraces Heritage Foundation Policy Recommendations. Not prospectively, but this is dated from their website on January 23rd, 2018, in the middle of Trump's presidency. Unfortunately, the rhetoric we've heard today from Republicans blaming the Biden-Harris administration for rising costs has been rife with misinformation for their own political gain. The truth of the matter is that Republicans are not serious about protecting everyday Americans. In fact, their current proposed policies and future policy plans sell out the very people they are sworn to protect. To understand this, we must look not further than the very policy playbook created for a Trump potential presidency, Project 2025. Among many listed proposals included in Project 2025, the 900-page plan calls for to consolidate power into the presidency, place the Justice Department squarely under Donald Trump's authority, gut civil service, and abolish many critical government agencies like the Department of Education. None of this sounds like protecting the American people because it isn't. What it does sound like, however, is how a party plans to dismantle democracy. Unsurprisingly, Project 2025 does nothing to address the climate crisis and lowering its associated root causes. Absent of any pollution reduction goals, Project 2025 sets out to gut the regulatory bodies that protect our air and water quality, eliminate longstanding programs that support clean energy, and radically expand oil and gas drilling. And unfortunately, Republicans here in Congress have already been hard at work to pave the way for this very agenda. They have, for example, tried to pass legislation that would allow unlimited exports of liquefied natural gas, gut energy efficiency standards for appliances, and repeal the Inflation Reduction Act. If successful, their efforts will dramatically worsen the climate crisis, which, let's be clear, has already proven to be very deadly. But since Republicans would like to talk about costs, let's talk about how their plans will impact costs for everyday Americans. Mr. Higgins, you mentioned in your testimony that the Project 2025 agenda would, quote, lock the United States into continued greenhouse gas emissions of more than 4.7 gigatons every year from now through 2050 and beyond, end quote. Can you describe the near and long-term public health costs that we would expect to be associated with emissions at that scale?
For the United States to continue emitting greenhouse gases at that rate, it would make it impossible for the world to reach net zero emissions like we need to do by mid-century. And failing to stabilize global temperatures at 1.5 degrees would lead to very significant, very near-term impacts. Wildfire risk, the exposure to wildfire pollution as a result, extreme heat, which can be deadly, and the list goes on. We're already seeing the effects today at less than 1.5 degrees, and continuing to emit at that rate would be disastrous.
And extreme weather patterns, both wet and dry, right? Like we've not seen in God knows how long.
That's right, both droughts and extreme flooding.
Okay, thank you. The scientific community agrees that the climate crisis is accelerating and climate disasters across our nation, and there are undoubtedly costs associated with those disasters, both not only to the economy, but everyday lives of Americans. Can you describe how growing disaster risk will impact costs for Americans, particularly if the climate crisis goes unchecked?
So costs are one of the, extreme weather is one of the primary drivers of costs. In 2023, last year, global droughts across multiple different countries at the same time as Russia's attacking the grain supplies in Ukraine contributed to the high energy or the high food prices globally. You also see the disasters, which happen to have a disproportionately rough impact on low-income households, including households that are in floodplains. And that is passed on more broadly through insurance rates. And all of these costs are extreme for households.
You mentioned, and I quote, fighting climate change fights inflation. Can you give us an example of that?
Yeah, so if we can stabilize global temperatures at 1.5 degrees, not only does that mean we have invested in cleaner energy forms and improved energy efficiency, it means that we're avoiding the worst of the extreme weather yet to come.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My time having expired, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back, and I'll go to the gentleman from Maryland, acting as ranking member, Ms.